So good morning and welcome to Parkview on this Labor Day Sunday. I like to read the scripture first because it really sets the stage about why we want to talk about what it means to talk about faith and work. So this is from Colossians chapter 3, verses 23 to 24. Servants, do what you're told by your earthly masters, and don't just do something, do a minimum that will get you by. Do your best. Work from the heart for your real master, for God, confident that you'll get paid in full when you come into your inheritance. Keep in mind always that the ultimate master you're serving is Christ. The sullen servant who does shoddy work will be held responsible. Being a follower of Jesus doesn't cover that work. So on this Labor Day Sunday, as Sarah has mentioned, it's really a time when we celebrate work and recognize the many contributions of those who do the jobs that sustain and grow our communities and our country. And it's also here at church, a good time for all of us to reflect on our own labors and think of how our faith has informed how we approach our jobs, our co-workers, and the purpose and mission of the work itself. Now, when I first reflected on this topic, I immediately thought of a few folks I worked or interacted with who were Christians and strong in their faith. One was a receptionist at the place where my then girlfriend Donna worked. But she was a very wonderful person who brought joy to the workplace and made everybody feel special. For her, the purpose of her work, she felt, was to glorify God and to serve co-workers and customers in the best possible way. Another person I remember was an economist for the state of California. He was a really smart guy who cared really deeply about his work and the family and took great satisfaction in seeing other folks succeed and supported and mentored me in both my personal and my work life. He also knew that being a dad was a full-time job, especially on weekends. And so one Monday, when he came back to work, exhausted from a family gathering weekend neighborhood basketball, he turned to me and said, "Titus, we come to work to rest." And then there was another coworker, a devout Christian who read the Bible at lunchtime, and I think was in training to become a minister. But some words that describe her work: dogmatic, judgmental, always believing that she was right and everyone was wrong, rigid in thinking, and insubordinate to the extent that I was even contemplating writing her up for creating a hostile workplace. So maybe it's better that we focus. So you see, when we think about faith and work through others, through the actions of others, it can get kind of complicated. So maybe it's better that we focus instead on our own personal journeys and start by asking ourselves some simple questions. How has faith impacted the positions we've held? And how has it also affected the choices that we've made? I'll share some of my thoughts later in my allotted 5 minutes. But first, we have 3 from our own church family who will be sharing their stories on work and faith, beginning with Dave McGill, everybody's favorite mail carrier.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not an extemporaneous speaker. And I'm sure you heard the lyric from the song by War. It's called Work. Look, what is it good for? Absolutely everything. And it's good for the mind, the body, the spirit. And from your high school, you probably remember the definition of work by physics. Work equals distance times force, or vice versa, force times distance. And literally, that's what a mail carrier's job is to move X amount of mass, X amount of distance, in X amount of time, using your own energy, of course. So, as you know, I was a mailman, not a mailman now, 15 months retired. So thanks. And it was a fun job in part, and the other part was really a work of labor. And the actual definition of work really suited the letter carrier to the letter. And if you need to know more about work, see Isaac Newton. And now faith we think about, and it's not an easy concept to really grasp because it's a concept. And what it is it's believing in God or believing in doctrines of religion without proof. So that's the thing, it's the belief without actual proof. And that's where your faith is really challenged in your life. And if you've ever checked out the Sunday bulletin on a communion Sunday, you might notice the invitation to the Lord's table. I won't read the whole thing, but it's a great prayer from the Iona community. The part that's relevant to me is like this: so come, you who have much faith, and you who have little. You have been here often, and you have not been here long. You have tried to follow, and you have failed. Well, I am that. I've come here a long time. I don't have that strong of faith, and that's not a confession. And I'm working on it. It's not static. It's improving by increments, although it's really not measured. But the association with you, with Parkview community in general, in prayer, realizes that it's a very important aspect of my life that really helped my work to develop a sense of greater kindness and a place in the actual community where I work that day as a mail carrier, to be attentive, to being accurate, to being friendly, and to not cussing out the customer whose dog attacked me more than one time. And although in 39 and a half years, I never got bit once, I certainly have the challenges. Now, on reflection, the attitude I had towards work was really improved by being a member of Parkview. And it developed a sense of kindness as much as I was able to do it with my supervisors, who often behaved in a thumb on you kind of approach rather than a team member. It was more like treat you as a servant rather than a coworker. Although it's improved over the course of my career, it still was like that when I retired. And that was quite difficult to stay at an even keel and not become militant, kind of like back and forth, which I had a difficult time restricting myself. I worked for a while as a union steward, so that sort of engendered a little bit of combative spirit. And I really didn't have that sense of humor for it, so I had to get out of it. Because I sort of developed the sense of, come on, I'll fight you. But that really wasn't appropriate in a work setting. As for what I continued to learn by living in a way with a God influence and love in my life, was to be more helpful to junior co-workers who came onto the job. Simple things like saying, hey, wear 2 thin pairs of socks and not a thick sock. That'll cut down your blisters. Pay attention to how much water you drink. It's vital, because Sacramento is so hot, and believe it or not, even in the winter, you're perspiring all day long. So just small things like that was. So as for some of the seeking justice and peace in my life through my association with God, with Jesus, with Parkview community, is just that, in part, it requires sacrifice. And it could be the donation you make to the church, or whether or not you donate to another place like Red Cross, or helping someone in an organization that helps people through natural disasters. So that's something I apply to my life more than when I first started in my work. This is not an easy assignment, and the time is very short, and I am long-winded. So as they say, leave them laughing when you go. Neither snow nor rain, heat nor gloom of night shall stay these warriors from swift completion of their appointed rounds. So you better get ready to go. That's really from Laurie Anderson. She's an avant-garde musician, and it's from her album Big Science, and the song is called Oh Superman. But the lyrics actually come from Herodotus, a Greek philosopher and intelligentsia, and they're actually inscribed on the face of the post office in New York City. So thanks a lot for your patience.
Thank you, Dave, for delivering some really first-class. Now we have a person who actually grew up at Parkview. Person I kind of know, here with to college, and the person who's here to talk about her faith as an educator.
Good morning. My story of faith at work begins with my journey to find meaningful work and how God walked with me on my journey. You see, I didn't plan to become a teacher or vice principal. As a college first year, my dream was to work in politics. Fresh off a summer internship at the state capitol, I was captivated by the energy, the suits, the opportunity to have an impact on systemic change. So I became a political science major, and as a junior, I applied for a fellowship that involved spending the summer at a public policy graduate school. I wanted it so bad. Worked for weeks on the application, articulating my previous experiences and political dreams. And then I was rejected. I was so deeply disappointed, and I felt lost and confused about my future. But looking back, that rejection was one of the best things to ever happen to me. Because instead of that policy fellowship, I spent the summer teaching history to 8th graders, and it changed my life. Who knew that teaching, something so aligned with my beliefs, values, and faith, could be such fun, and that I could be good at it? I thank God for that summer and for teaching me that rejection can be an opportunity for a better path forward. So today, I'm one of 4 vice principals at Franklin High School in Elk Grove. As you can imagine, a large part of my job is responding to student behavior. Each day I show up at work, not knowing what the day will bring, but that I will be responsible for handling it. Sometimes the situations that I deal with are straightforward, like a student who won't put away their phone in class, or another that cheated on their science test. Other times the situations are heavy or complex. I'll get a call on my radio that a fight has broken out in the lunch club, or that a group of students is smoking in the bathroom. A counselor will bring me a young person who has expressed thoughts of suicide. I'll open an email to a message from a parent saying a child is being bullied. Being responsible for handling these types of situations can often feel stressful and exhausting. It can feel a bit like putting the tracks down in front of a moving train, or standing in front of a fire hose going full blast. But I think over time, and I've been doing this for about 8 years now, my faith and my relationship with God has helped me to find the courage within. I've learned to take a deep breath, ask God to give me strength, and be with me as I sort through things and respond. God helps me feel less alone. Additionally, my faith shapes my approach to these situations. It reminds me that when I'm working with students, I should have compassion and curiosity, show them respect and love. This looks like, first and foremost, doing my best to remember that the student who I'm dealing with is a good kid who made a bad choice, or a good kid having a hard time. I remind myself that there might be a lot going on in their life that I don't know about, that their behavior is a symptom of an unmet need or a skill that they have not yet developed. I remember that it's my job as an educator to teach them and help them grow, that simply punishing and shaming them gets in the way of true learning and growth from the situation. God inspires me to practice restorative justice, which involves helping the student to take the time to reflect and identify who was harmed by their actions, and then take steps to repair that harm. This can look like an apology, conflict mediation, and act of service. When I worked in San Jose, I had a student named Jesus. On the first day of school, he crossed his arms and told me how annoyed he was to be there. He then proceeded to get into conflicts with many teachers. But as I got to know him, I learned that he struggled with gang influences in his neighborhood, lived in poverty, didn't believe he would live past 18. He had a tough relationship with his father. But then I also saw how he loved his mother, was a deep thinker, and afraid of asking hard questions. I saw him take a stand for a peer so different from him who was being bullied. It took time, a lot of listening, and showing up, but in the end, Jesus and I developed a strong relationship. When he was accepted to a four-year college as a psychology major, we cried many happy tears together. It's such a privilege to do the work that I do. Often I feel like I'm not only witnessing miracles, but that I get to be a part in making them. I get to help students grow and see them transform their lives. This work has changed me as a person. It's a wonderful gift from God. Amen.
Thank you, Megan. Reminding us of how important it is, the work that you do in terms of nurturing and growing the next generations. Now we have Isla, attorney in town. I understand you've been off work for the past week or so on strike.
Strike.
She's here to share with us her stories about faith.
Happy Labor Day, everyone. This is a lot easier with just 12 people in a jury box. So, as Titus mentioned, being a Christian in the workplace, as a Christian, I've always felt that our brand is kind of broken, right? Being a Christian is not considered cool anymore. And unlike Dave, I always aspired to be a cool Christian. So I'm a Christian, but I cuss. As a law student, I went to school in the evening. I worked during the day. I did not take law school seriously. And I was hoping some of the Sunday school kids would be here to hear me say that. I got straight C's. I had no lawyers in my family. I was lost and confused. I had no time to go to church. I was a writer by day, and I truly thought that I would never practice law. I thought writing was going to be my end game. In 2013, I moved to California. I wrote pause for applause. In 2013, I moved to California, and I began working at Legal Services of Northern California, Legal Aid. And through that workplace and the volunteering I did afterwards, I met our very own Irene Uno. And thank God for that. For the first time in my life, I didn't just have a chill desk job where I was working at a typewriter, keyboard all day. Instead, these were real people with real problems, folks who were really, truly suffering and needed the help of an advocate. And that was when I found out I had failed the California bar. Failing the bar may have been the best thing for me. It was then when I decided to start looking for my why. Why was I doing this? What did I hope to get out of it? And the images, the faces of my clients came to mind. And that song came to mind. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. It's a beautiful song about service with beautiful lyrics. And that was when I made my little vision board, my top 10 reasons to pass the bar, and I dedicated my license to the poor, the voiceless, the imprisoned. And I promised that no matter what happened, what victories and defeats, I would let God get the glory for all of it. When I walked out of the bar exam that day, I picked up the Sac News and Review, and they had their little astrology, things. And as a Virgo, by the way, it's Virgo season now, I saw something that said, you will take a test and pass it, basically. I was like, okay, cool. In my professional life, the verse that I aspired and used as my mantra was, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman or workwoman who needs not to be ashamed. I poured myself into my work with immigrants, many fleeing persecution, labor trafficking, sex trafficking, folks from so many countries, so many cultures, people whose faith humbled me. But it was exhausting to work 7 days a week. In 2017, I was working at McGeorge Immigration Clinics, and that's when I walked into the Sacramento Food Bank, and I ran into Irene. When I ran into her, my soul was exhausted. This was during the Trump administration. My clients were being detained, put into ICE. I felt helpless. I felt overwhelmed. Just when my soul was weary, she told me about Parkview, and I started coming there. And by the way, the choir also helps with that. Finding a home church rejuvenated my spirit, and I sought to exemplify the fruits of the Spirit in my workplace. Joy, love, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, faith. 2 years ago today, I joined Sacramento County as a trial attorney. And the verse that I put up above my desk, which may be why everyone knows I'm a Christian, is, I can do all things through Christ who strengtheneth me. All things. As a public defender, we're appointed to defend folks charged with criminal violations. It was a whole new level for someone who grew up as sheltered as I did. We had to visit folks with mental illness that was untreated, folks who were unhoused, living in the filthy conditions of the Maine County Jail, negotiating with attorneys who were trained to win at all costs, surrounded by severe trauma. And the consequences kept going up. We start with misdemeanors, which is a maximum of 1 year in county jail. Now we're at felonies. My current trial client is facing 25 years in prison as a teenager for sleeping in a car as a homeless man. I was the only South Asian attorney when I started. There's 3 others now. And I incorporate my faith by praying without ceasing for everyone, my clients, co-counsel, judges. I aspire to conduct myself with integrity, even with almost 200 attorneys, where there's so much chaos. So finally, I think a lot of my grandfather in Pakistan, where being a Christian was not really something that they were allowed to show off in their public life. And I think of that verse, by their deeds you will know them. That's something I think about. The other thing I think about a lot is being bold. Attorneys are trained to be bold, but God also tells us to be bold in the Bible. Bold as a lion. And finally, my favorite verse, 2 Timothy 1:7. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and of a sound mind.
Thank you, Kishwar. Supposed to say, this is Kishwar for the people. It's also for God. Right? Thank you all, and I think at this point I'd like to maybe offer some thoughts that I have on this Labor Day about faith and work. Your indulgence, I keep this under 5 minutes. The first thing that came to my mind when thinking about faith and work. Can you hear me okay? Jesus. So is this better? Yeah. So as I said, one of the first things I thought about in faith and work is just to remind ourselves that God opens doors, but he closes them too. I think I've come to truly believe that God has a plan for all of us, and his plan is revealed in the doors of opportunity that he opens for us, but also for the ones that he closes too. I've been really fortunate to have had good jobs, and for that, I felt I've always been blessed that he opened for me the right doors at the right time, at the right places. But he also closed some too. At one point in my career, I was up for some very political jobs, and I was attracted by their prestige and their visibility. But I knew that the work would be brutal and that I would have to make choices that may not be in line with my own values and my own priorities. So God, I believe, had a hand in closing those doors, and he opened other doors that led to jobs more in line with my values and my abilities and my temperament. The second thought I have about work and faith is that God's creation of diversity is a gift that should be celebrated and glorified. I think God's goal in all of history is to uphold and display the glory of his name for the enjoyment of all people in all nations. And throughout my own career, I've been blessed to have worked with individuals from all different backgrounds, economic status, cultures, communities, and religions, including those who were not religious. But my work has confirmed that God has blessed us with diversity in talents and gifts, and it takes all of them together to deliver value and create the goodness for those who we serve. And I know that these days that there's a lot of pushback on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I believe that humanity's diversity is the result of God's own handiwork, and that it's there to reconcile differences and help us get along at work and in our personal and in our spiritual lives. The last thing I want to share with you is my belief that every job is important. Every job contributes to the common good. Work gets more complicated every day with internet and with online stuff, people of different backgrounds and ages working together. It's very complicated. And yet, while the specifics of a job or an office may change, what will always be true is that effort and attitude are the most important. This comes from our faith, as I read in the scripture, and Paul writes in reference to work. Don't just do the minimum that will get you by. Do your best. Work comes from the heart, for your real master God is confident that you will get paid in full when you come into your inheritance. In government, I spent 35 years in government. Taking a law and making it into a program is hard. is a lot of detailed work. And sometimes the detailed work can be onerous and tedious and frustrating. But I've learned, too, that no job is too big or too small. Being a vice principal at a high school and cleaning the bathroom is still a labor of love. Rather, so let's think about and believe and trust that all work is purposeful, that it serves the common good, and we do it to make people's lives better. And I've always reminded myself, too, that when work is complicated and we get bogged down by the little details, the footnotes, the reconciling numbers, that while the detail, while, as we say, the devil is in the detail, always the angel is in the outcome. The devil is in the detail, the angel is in the outcome. As people of faith, we do the work, all the work, to make a difference. Thanks for listening. Thanks be to God. Amen. Now, I'm asking the three panelists and myself to come back up and perhaps give us some last words or lessons that they want to share with the rest of our community here. Megan and Kishore. Open, close. Go ahead.
A few final words regarding faith and work. For me, I try to maintain the fundamental belief, the concept, the deep teaching that God is love. And whatever you can do in love is really fundamental. And along with that is, how can I be the mirror of love? And furthermore, sort of a mantra that I try to repeat to myself in life with challenges of people and other problems in life, whether it's the weather or traffic, is I am safe and I am loved. And that is just like a cornerstone. And from that, it gives kind of a sense of a space, like a pause or rest in music, so all the notes aren't jammed together creating cacophony, but rather, a sense of balance and timing. And that sort of enables a lightness, maybe a joy, and some enlightenment in my life. Thank you.
So it's funny that my dad mentioned vice principals in the bathroom. Because I have a quick story. It's funny, we didn't talk before this, but clearly we're related. Okay. So here's the story. Last year, something unfortunate happened. A group of girls had taken spray paint and they graffitied all over the bathroom. There was also toilet paper everywhere. Our custodians and our campus supervisors were just beside themselves when this happened. They were already short-staffed, and it had been a very long week. And they just simply did not have time for that. So a final thought is that God reminds me that as a leader, I need to show respect and love for all staff, and that no job is beneath me. So I decided that I would clean the bathroom. I rummaged through our cleaning closet and I sent a quick email to staff that the girls' bathroom would be closed while I cleaned, and that if anyone wanted to help, they'd be welcome. I didn't expect anyone to come. Let's face it, high school bathrooms are disgusting. But then something really special happened. So many students and staff showed up to help that we could not fit in the bathroom. People of all genders, grade levels. One student told me, "We couldn't let you do this by yourself, Ms. Toyama." The bathroom was cleaned quickly. We all left feeling a sense of pride. Christ lived by example, and he reminds me to do the same.
One thing that I learned from my faith that I incorporated into my work life is the importance of rest, which I alluded to earlier. Many of us are in professions where burnout is constant. And I don't know about you, but I grew up hearing all those Bible verses from Proverbs about ants, look to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, right? And I found myself burning out many times, working way too much. So I definitely took to the scripture and looked for verses about rest and realized there was a long history of rest also being a radical act. And that's something that I see with my coworkers today, both the public defenders and district attorneys, as we're on day 6, coming up on day 6 of our strike. Many of them don't know what to do with themselves, because they've been burning that midnight oil 7 days a week just to, help our clients. So I think it's really important for us later, those of us who are later in our career, to model a healthy rest practice.
And for me, you know how much I love coming to Parkville on Sunday, right? Whether it be the singing or the fellowship or the sermons, or just, it's like the highlight of my week. But you know what? But then Monday comes. And I feel that sometimes we tend to segment our lives into church versus non-work. But recently, well, not too recently, but I really feel that what we do here at Parkview on Sunday, what we learn about getting along with people, what we learn about faith, what we learn about hope, has an impact, not just here on Sunday, but every day. Every day. And so none of my sayings is that Parkview is great, and it makes me a better person on Monday. At work, with family, the love I feel, the fellowship, the understanding, the empathy, it starts here, but it continues every day, beginning on Monday throughout the week. So keep that in mind, please, that, again, it's not just about Sunday, it's also about Monday as well. Thank you.
Titus, Dave, Megan, Kishore, we are honored and humbled by your witness to your faith and your work, and we thank you. Thank you so much for enriching our lives and lifting our spirits by what you've shared today.